Klippenstein, our fallen hero and dear friend, has done some great reporting over at The Nation, his new gig, where he basically got a hold of an internal Bloomberg campaign memo, which detailed how Bloomberg is planning to go after Elizabeth Warren and also explain away the fact that he raised money for and endorsed her Republican opponent for Senate in 2012. Here is the memo that was leaked to Kenny Clips. And as you guys can see there, it's a little bit hard to read, but Bloomberg supported Scott Brown in Massachusetts. They're trying to say because of his willingness to buck the NRA, when really he just, as a Republican, opposed one very basic provision that the NRA wanted to get passed. He was in favor of the assault weapons ban, but was quite favorable to the NRA most of the time. Now, he has also donated a lot of money to Republican politicians in the past. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, an outspoken advocate for gun control, this was an article from 2014, recently gave $250,000 to help reelect a Mississippi Republican with an A+ rating from the NRA. According to the latest campaign finance filings, Bloomberg gave $250,000 to Mississippi Conservatives PAC, a group aiming to reelect veteran Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran, who is in the fight of his political life against his primary rival, Chris McDaniel. So Bloomberg is now using the excuse for donating to and supporting Scott Brown because, oh yeah, he took on the NRA one time. Yet he had no problem donating to and raising money for Thad Cochran, again, a Republican with an A+ rating from the NRA. So this just does not pass the smell test.
I think you have to understand his, basically, so you had Scott Brown and you had Elizabeth Warren. And in terms of their approach to the NRA and gun control, Scott Brown was against one minor provision that the NRA disagreed with him on. And Elizabeth Warren presumably is a dozen guns stacked up in a trench coat.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know, like what are you talking about? You can try to make the case that, I'm saying him, not you, that it was because of that thing with the NRA. I have a simpler explanation. He supported the Republican because he was a Republican and he tried to get as many Republicans elected around the country as possible, up to and including endorsing George W. Bush for president and saying afterward he wished Mitt Romney had beaten Barack Obama. That's what Republicans do, and he did it.
Well, let me just give you a few more details about Scott Brown and his endorsement of Scott Brown back in 2012. Again, Elizabeth Warren was successful. She ended up defeating him. And Elizabeth Warren, like you were saying, John, I don't know if the audience is aware, but maybe she could have been some sort of gun nut. She loves AK-47s, goes to the gun range in her off time, wears a bullet around her neck, just she's all strapped all the time. Let's go to a Politico article from 2012, which explains Bloomberg's reasoning. Mayor Michael Bloomberg this morning defended his endorsement of Senator Scott Brown, citing Brown's opposition to one particularly controversial piece of NRA-backed legislation, though Bloomberg also noted that Brown is not good on guns generally. Bloomberg will host a fundraiser in August, again this is in 2012, for Brown in New York City. Brown, a Republican who opposes a national ban on assault weapons, is defending his Massachusetts seat against liberal darling Elizabeth Warren, who supports the ban. So, if you really cared about gun control, you might support the person who is in favor of the assault weapons ban, but the real story is that you like gun control because it's convenient if that candidate is also in favor of the Republican conservative policies that you privilege over that. Wall Street tax cuts for the rich, that's what Elizabeth Warren was against. So he was gonna oppose her no matter what, because that's really not his top priority, even though that's what he's trying to position himself as in this Democratic primary.
For those of us that are confused about exactly where Michael Bloomberg's stance on guns is it's okay because so is he's confused on it as well. He doesn't know exactly where he is because he doesn't care about where he is. So the principal thing is, the principal argument about where you stand and where your principles lie is null and void in this point. If you flip back and forth so many times, there's no more tracking where you stand on this. But there is one constant. It's supporting people that will support Republicans that will also help support in you hoarding more money and not paying your fair share or even contributing to society the same way the rest of us do. So that's the constant. If you look for what's really happening happening there, you'll see that. Now I think they mentioned, we're gonna see potentially some of the candidates come after Bernie Sanders tonight on previous gun stances, and he's had those questions come at him before. I'm just curious whether or not we're gonna see the level of questions come this guy's way as far as his back and forth and his support for certain candidates versus his opposition to others because of where they landed on the gun issue, where they didn't land on the gun issue, but maybe it's about which political party they were associated with and which one was gonna be most beneficial to him. And we'll get to some of those audio clips of the way he thought and the way he approaches politics and giving the candidates and what he expects of them later.
Yeah. I hope that we see some repetition of the attacks against him from the first debate. So you bring up the sexual harassment suits, you bring up stop and frisk, obviously. Those are huge issues that should be the things people think about when they think about Mike Bloomberg. But in addition, I would add, he has for decades tried to make sure that Republicans rule over as many Americans as possible. And like in a very real sense, Donald Trump becoming president didn't have to be as bad as it was if he didn't have the majority in the Senate, if he didn't get the majority in the Supreme Court. Those are all things, tools, weapons that were given to Donald Trump by a lot of people, but few individually contributed more than Mike Bloomberg did. And in an electorate that supposedly is worried about Bernie Sanders not being a Democrat, wait until they find out when one of the candidates, not Bernie Sanders, has tried to get Republicans elected and has spent countless millions of his own dollars to do it.
And just the argument about how his money would make him the best candidate to defeat Trump. That's the only really thing he has to stand on at this point, because everyone knows how uncharismatic and terrible he is. Hillary Clinton had more money than Donald Trump in 2016, and I wonder how that turned out. In the general election, media is the money there. Like, there's so much free media that how much money you have doesn't really matter when you're the candidate that's representing the two parties. It's really, you get so much free media that it's not gonna matter. And it's so clear that Bloomberg would lose to Trump, as well as the fact that he is so unprincipled, even on his pet issue, gun control. He was way more in favor of keeping his tax cuts in place than actually supporting someone who would do something on gun control, Elizabeth Warren. In fact, he backed her opponent vociferously and tried to make sure that she wasn't going to be in the Senate. Too bad for him.
So if you think about it, his vow is to make sure we find someone that can defeat Trump. If he happens to not defeat Trump, if he happens to even get the nomination, that's okay, doesn't really matter. Because again, the policies line up. This is what you have to look at. There's no devastation if he loses to Trump from his point of view. He's like, well, I mean, it'd have been fun to be president, but at least not that much changes.
Yeah. Don't miss your chance to win a trip to Los Angeles and have dinner with Cenk, Anna, and me. Just head to tyt.com/dinner in LA to register to win. Sign up for a free Aspiration Spend and Save account, register your eligibility, swipe your Aspiration card on daily purchases to gain entries to win a chance to fly to LA and have dinner with the TYT hosts. Not only are you entering to win that dinner in LA with Cenk and Anna and myself, but you're also able to deposit your hard-earned money without it going towards fossil fuel exploration or production. And as a friendly reminder, even if you already have an Aspiration account, you must still first register to be eligible for the sweepstakes.